Welcome back to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. I'm super excited to have my head coach, Amy Guldner, back here with me. How are you doing, Amy?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me back.
Awesome. Well, you guys, if you haven't heard Amy's story, you need to go back. I think it's around 10 episodes back. Amy Guldner shared her whole story with alcohol and how she became a coach. The episode was titled, Should You Become a Coach? And even if you're not thinking about becoming a coach and you skipped over that episode, you need to go back and hear Amy's story because it's really brilliant. Amy is such a symbol to me of what it looks like to heal your inner critic and really give a lot of compassion back to yourself. And she really shares that so beautifully in her story. But I thought we'd come back on today. You know, Amy helps me so much behind the scenes and with clients, especially in our Become Euphoric program. I thought I'd come back and just talk a little bit more about like what coaching and change and really making an identity shift looks like around alcohol from her perspective. So I just have some questions for Amy. We'll have just a good conversation around this, and I hope you enjoy it. So Amy, you are just an integral part of Become Euphoric, the signature program to help women change their relationship with alcohol. And for anyone who's not familiar or is listening to this podcast for the first time, Become Euphoric is my program to help women really significantly change how they see alcohol, shift their subconscious desires around it, and then also start to unearth what greater passions that they have inside of them. And we do that through a very intense curriculum, and then also through our group coaching sessions. We have a private community that's really supportive, and we have some private sessions as well. And so I'm so curious, Amy, as you've experienced this and have been just such an integral part in helping the women there, why do you think something like Become Euphoric helps women? Like, what are the different elements for you that you kind of can see being put together in this container to like make the difference between doing this alone?
Wow, it is a huge, huge difference. And I think I would say primarily it is the support. It's like the community support and accountability. I think that's probably, when I've heard of successful AA groups, and I haven't heard of that many of them, but it does seem to be that it's that community support, and it's hard for people to find that. But I think when they come into the Become Euphoric program, they've had enough familiarity with your voice, with whether they've read your book, they've listened to other episodes of this podcast, they get your monthly newsletter, they follow you on social media, whatever it is, there is such a commonality of the people who are drawn into your program, even though they range tremendously in age, tremendously in their educational, socioeconomic background, all of those things. There are just some real common things about all of those women who come in, the intuitive, the knowing they were made for something more, all of that. So they get that community support there. They get it in the Slack group where they can talk back and forth with each other. They can benefit from other people sharing, even if they're not sharing themselves. And then on the group calls, they can also have that same sense of community and support. And as you know, we hear about them, sharing emails and staying in touch long after their time in the program is done. So I think it's that community support that probably really is one of, if not the biggest benefits that they get by coming into that. But of course, they get the content, which is what you have put together from all of the different sources you've been studying over the years, your different certifications, the things that have really spoken to you. And then you've put that into the program. So it really hits all of these women like right where they're at, which I think is a little bit different from maybe, other programs or books that they might do. They come in and this stuff is like ready made for them, like right where they at. So they've got that community support and then the content. And then of course, with the coaching that they get in the program as well.
Well, Amy, you provide such of that amazing coaching as well. Anyone who comes into the program gets a private session with you and just so much support in our private group. It's incredible. And thank you so much for that brilliant answer. It's always really cool to just hear like what an outsider for different perspective kind of sees at it. So, when you're working with a client, I'm just so curious, like what matters most to you? Like if you could right now talk to a client through the airways of this podcast, what do you want them to know? What matters to you most about how they see themselves, or just elements of really instituting change in that person?
Wow. What a great and big, awesome question. I think I most want them to know that they can do this. Like they can get through this. And I am there for them. You are there for them. This program is there for them, but not to give up hope, because for someone like me who struggled, gosh, I think it was 5 years of trying to make a change with alcohol, and constantly, I'm only going to have 2 glasses a night, or I'm not going to drink, after 8 p.m. or whatever my rules were. I disappointed myself and let myself down so many times over and over and over again. And that loss of hope, that discouragement was so toxic to me, not just with my relationship with alcohol, but my other relationships, my self-care, everything else in my life was impacted by that. So I think I would really most want these other women and men too, to know that they can do this. There is hope. They can get through this. And that, by working with me, we'll work on the different, sort of pillars of change that I have for them. But I think as the overarching thing is that there is hope and they can do this.
Yeah. And so like when you offer your clients, for example, like when you're working with them, what are some of those principles that you keep in mind to ensure that they experience that hope with you?
Oh, well, on my end of it. So what I kind of look at as sort of like what I offer to my clients versus kind of like the things that I really work with them on in terms of like their own change. But the first one I think about is ruthless compassion. So I really try to be there right alongside my clients in all of the struggles that they have, but without a big pity party. Like that is not at all what I do as a coach, but I am there with them. And I think the best way I can talk about that is that ruthless compassion. Another thing that I really try to offer is a deep well. So maybe it's as a lawyer, I really value being well-educated, informed on things. And I feel that that's my duty and my obligation to my clients is to know as much as I can about alcohol, about habit change, about growth and personal development. So I really try to take as much of that in as I can so that I can then pour out from that to each of my clients. As I said before, they're the hope, but it's not just that ooey gooey, loosey goosey, whatever kind of, toxic positivity hope. I try to offer hope that is based on science and that's, well-grounded, well-founded, giving them that realistic picture of what is in their future that's based on science, based on research, based on theory. That makes me think of the neuroplasticity videos. You've probably seen them, Caroline, and some of your listeners probably have as well, but where they have those microscopes and they look at like the neurons and how we can see them breaking the connections and forming new connections. And those just blew me away. That whole saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks is absolutely wrong, so I love offering that to my clients. Again, that hope based on science. Another thing that I really try to offer them is just help building on their successes and rebuilding that trust in themselves. As I was saying before, from my own experience, I know how that trust in yourself can really disappear when you're trying to make a change, whether it be with alcohol or something else, and finding that you're not doing it and you're letting yourself down. So through different tactics and tools on lengthening, focusing on curiosity over willpower, celebrating the small victories. That's one that just really blew my mind when I learned about it, even from a neuroscience perspective, how important it is that we do that. And I was just rereading one of my favorite books over spring break last week. It's Matthew Kelly's Perfectly Yourself. And he had a quote in there that talked about progress. And it was something about that the reason that most of us fail to achieve any real and sustainable change in our lives is because we are focusing too much on that desired outcome and not enough on the progress that we're making. So when we can condition ourselves to focus on that progress, then those advances that we're making encourage us to persevere in achieving the goals. And it's just when we lose sight of that progress, then we can really become discouraged. And then I also just really like to help clients smash those self-limiting beliefs. And you talk about this so beautifully in all of your programs, but as we know, alcohol holds people back and it makes us play small. And I think all of the euphoric clients, even when they can't see it when they come in, they have dreams and goals on their heart. And those dreams and goals are part of their passion and purpose. It's why they are here on this planet. And I love helping them to uncover those and then reverse those mental blocks that are keeping them stuck, by tackling kind of one by one the thoughts and the beliefs and the assumptions that are keeping them stuck. So I think that, as an overview, is kind of what I try to offer to my clients, with the lawyer caveat that I am still pretty new to this. So I, having only been alcohol free for less than 3 years, I really am still very close to clients in terms of their journey with alcohol. I can relate so well to what they're going through. This is not some far distant thing I did in the past, but by the same, token, I've been certified for about 1.5 years. So I'm still pretty new to that. And I'm learning constantly, taking in, as I said before, all of those things that I use to try to make me a deep well. And I'm constantly, like adding new things and trying to, maybe tweak what I'm offering to my clients, or what pillars of change I might be focusing on with them. So I guess all of this is for this moment in time. If we talk again in 6 months or something, these things may change, but that's where I'm at today on what I try to offer to the clients.
Amy, as you speak, I just feel how warm, generous, and truly caring this kind of support system really is. And it kind of makes me just think about what levels of support we do get in our lives, even someone with a good support system, even someone who maybe has, let's say, a good friend, a good sister, a good spouse, like, are we really getting to this level of like, I see you, I hear you, I understand you type energy? Are we really able to talk about some of the more vulnerable things and get someone who supports you 100% and believes in you 100%, but completely objectively? You know what I mean? Like our sister or our brother or whatever, they might see us so differently, and they might have their own angle because they have a win-loss kind of scenario with you. But someone who's so outside of you as a coach, like it doesn't see it like that. And they can really truly see your potential. And I think in a different way. And I'm kind of brought back to when I first worked with my very first coach. And, I was just starting out, and it almost felt like, I think I've said this before, but it almost felt like sometimes the dreams I had, the ideas I had about, going forward with my goals, it almost felt like I was delusional. Like if I had shared it with my current support system, everyone would have just thought I was crazy or unrealistic or didn't know what I was talking about. And, my coach helped me defeat, literally, I mean, not completely 100%, but she really helped me change the language I use when talking with this inner critic that I had that didn't believe in myself. And it was this pure source of like, you have this in the bag, like you are going to do this, and ways that really helped change my subconscious brain in a way that nothing else had up until that point. I mean, things had slowly, but that was like a huge shift. So I'm just kind of, really just recognizing, like, we talk a lot about like our needs. We talk a lot about like what women even too in our society need to grow and get quality and more power and more, fulfillment out of lives. And in this idea of support, like 100% almost unconditional support, it just doesn't seem like something that really exists for most people. And how just precious it really is. Sometimes I'll be in between coaches and I'm like, oh my God, I just need someone right now. I just need someone to have my back no matter what I'm going through. It's just a really special, I think, arrangement, and there's ways to obviously get paid support. There's ways to even get free mentorship, but whichever way you're able to get right now, get that support, if I could just say something else.
Absolutely. I think the closest thing I've had with that before maybe is like a really good therapist, but even that is so different for the reasons we talked about, I think, in the prior podcast together, where, I was talking a little bit about the difference between, I think, a therapist and a coach. And so there's some, where you get a little bit of that, but it's almost, it really, that good coaching relationship really is, it's sort of like, there is like a therapist angle, but then there's also, as you said, like the sister and the friend and the mom and aunt, like all of it combined, that's just really cheering for you, listening to you, hearing you, helping you, move past those roadblocks in a way that's not like nothing else I've encountered. It's a really neat relationship. And that's why I think it's so important too, for people to really seek out a coach that can relate to them. There's all kinds of coaches out there in this space, and people have all different kinds of backgrounds and different stories with that. And we really do encourage people to find a coach if they're looking for one-on-one coaching that they feel they can relate to, that there's something in their story that really resonates with them, that the struggles they've had are something, and that they've overcountered are things that that client is wanting to do in their life.
Yeah. And then same thing with the success, like if you want something and no one in your immediate or local kind of friendships or family circles has ever done it or knows how to do it, like you cannot go on this blindly. Like you need a role model. You need someone who's gone before you, who can see that solution for you too, so that also, that's another really good way of putting it. Like if there's someone out there who's achieved what you've achieved, they're such a good person to model and to work with if that's available to you and to them. You talked a little bit about, Amy, the 6 pillar change earlier, and I'm so curious, like how you view change, what has to happen, especially obviously as changing a relationship with alcohol. And what's really cool, you guys, is that like Amy and I think are very complementary in the sense that like at the big picture, we see very much the same goals and same vision, but yet like she has such unique brilliance, such unique ways of describing things that are much stronger in areas that I am, and then vice versa. I have my own thing. So Amy has this really incredible way of talking, I think, about change and really helping women love themselves again. So if you could just describe what those are for us, that'd be amazing.
Sure. Again, at the current moment, I've come up with 6 of them as I'm working with a lot of different women. And so as an overview, the 6 of them are, first of all, just identifying and using your own core strengths and values. So as you have seen, Carolina, throughout all the women and men who've come into your programs, everyone has their own unique struggles and strengths, and they're at very different parts of the journey. So I think a big part for me in working with someone right from the get-go is figuring out what that person's core values are and their strengths. And then we use that throughout. And then these other ones are all like, they're not necessarily in any particular order, but I talk about understanding science and neuroscience, self-compassion, mindfulness, curiosity, and gratitude. So on the core values and strengths, there's so many different ways that we can figure those things out. And the ones that we use a lot in the Euphoric programs are the core values exercise and the Enneagram. I also like using the VIA strengths inventory with people. I think so often the suffering that we experience is because we're making choices that aren't aligned with our own core values. Or maybe it's just because we're trying to find someone else's recipe for self-growth. So when we can really dig into what makes us uniquely us, what are the things that are most important to us, then we can get a handle on how to go about using those values and using that strength to help them make the habit changes that they want. My second pillar, as you and all the people in the programs know well, is science and neuroscience. And I just totally geek out about that. And I think one of the main reasons I do that is because that was the pillar that set me, over the edge on my alcohol-free journey. I'd already been trying to embark on this self-growth, personal improvement, and I had made a lot of progress in a number of other areas, but I was not touching the alcohol piece for a long time because, of course, I didn't need to do that. That's what made me awesome, blah, blah, blah. So the science piece for me was the one that just really took it over the edge for me. And I think about it with clients as kind of a 2-part situation. One is understanding what alcohol really does and doesn't do for us. And then it's also understanding how to use our brains to our own advantage. There are lots of theories and ideas out there. And as you mentioned, I'm really drawn to sort of like the evidence-based approaches to habit change and growth. I was I'm married to an ER doctor, for crying out loud. I'm a lawyer, like very well-educated person and couple. And yet I had no idea what alcohol really did and didn't do for me. I was just totally believing all of the lies of society, like hook, line, and sinker on it. And I think when we learn the science, we see that our brains are just doing what they're supposed to do with an addictive substance. And that helped me with that shame component that was looming so large. And it's a component that looms large for our clients too. Thinking about this podcast today, I actually was just looking up some numbers because I was thinking about that alcohol soak society and why we don't really know the truth about what alcohol does. And I saw some statistics. It said the global market for alcoholic beverages in 2023 is $1.5 trillion. In the US alone, it's over 73 billion. And then the alcohol ad spending for 2023 was projected to be about $7 billion. So it's no wonder so many of us get stuck in thinking that alcohol is wonderful, the cure-all elixir. But when you can really dig into those false beliefs you have about the benefits of alcohol, it's so much easier to make the changes with that. We talk a lot about dopamine, for example. Yes, it causes a spike. Alcohol causes a spike, but it is that artificial spike. And our brains right away know that this is artificial, that something's going on here. That our brains are that master of homeostasis. And it goes right away into, producing the dynorphins and doing the whole downward pleasure cycle that then leads to fewer and fewer highs. We don't go up as much with the alcohol, but we go down even lower each time. Wash, rinse, repeat. Now we've got tolerance and addiction. So I love helping my clients understand the truth on the science and neuroscience if they don't already have it. Some of them come in and they've already read your book or they've learned about that from other things. My third pillar is self-compassion and grace. And that's just how we speak to ourselves. You alluded to that earlier, like that inner voice. And the impact of this pillar just cannot be overstated. Guilt and shame make things so much worse. And then, of course, we have to drink to cope with those because they are so deeply painful. I think our subconscious often tells us that guilt and shame are the ticket, they're the way to go. But we know that doesn't work. We know the science has shown that positive emotion is the key. And I think also shame somehow tricks us into thinking that we've done something. So it's like, well, lets us off the hook. Well, at least I feel horrible about it, so I don't have to really make any changes, So it's like a weird trick that it plays on us that way. I think self-compassion is probably one of the toughest things for the clients that I worked with. And they were probably drawn to me because they know that I struggled with that myself. And I still do, but I've made just huge strides on that. I think sometimes the struggle might have been partially due to the fact that I was a litigation attorney and I could just rip myself into pieces like nobody else. But I think for myself and for a lot of the clients in Euphoric, we've got that critical, nasty inner voice that we've had for a long time. And we think that it has enabled us to function and succeed. We think, that, oh, I can kick myself in the butt. That's what got me through school or through a difficult job, through exams, whatever it might have been. And maybe it did help at some point in the past, but it's no longer serving us. And that is such a big component of the Euphoric programs that I love, of that realization through your intuition and wisdom that something is not serving you. And it is that shame and inner critic for so many people that needs to be set aside, that it's just not serving them anymore. So, when I got into my really, really dark days, it was primarily with my kids. And I had I guess just a suicidal ideation would probably be the best way to describe it. But I remember that voice in my mind telling me, you do some good in the world, but it will never outweigh the bad. You are just too flawed. You're messing your kids up so much, and that they would just be better off without you even on the planet. And thankfully, that's when authors like Brene Brown and Rachel Stafford and other people came into my life. I said they were like my life coaches, before I realized what a life coach was, with their books. But it's such a critical component, I think, for any lasting change. And so that's a big one that I work on with people. That fourth pillar is mindfulness. And I had heard about the benefits of mindful meditation for years, but I was very reluctant to get on board. But I was also super desperate to develop a pause and to become less reactive. And then the science on mindful meditation just became too compelling for me not to try. I think I used to have this notion that if a thought popped into my mind, well, it was there for a reason and I need to pay attention to it. Like I wouldn't have had this thought if it wasn't like really important to have. But I learned, and now I help my clients learn, that thoughts really are just things. They're these random secretions of our brain. They are not something that we need to believe. So I work with all of my clients on helping them to develop some type of meditation practice if they don't already have one. Those most powerful thoughts and beliefs are the ones that we're not even aware are stories. We think they're fact and reality, but they're just stories. So I get that pleasure and honor of working with my clients, of helping them to unpack the thoughts from the stories. But back on the mindful piece, those thoughts of like, okay, I need to have a drink every night when I get home, or whatever the habit might be, that practice of repeating that thought over and over creates that outcome. And then we get those physical structures in our brain, those like deep grooves that are very smooth and easy to travel on. But back to the hope piece as well, we can actively like get in there and interrupt those and develop new beliefs that actually empower us rather than keeping us stuck. But we do have to catch them as they come in. Otherwise, we're just on autopilot. We're getting jerked around by them. So that mindfulness component does help you to catch them. And then you can work on allowing and accepting them and getting curious, which leads to my next pillar of change, about what they're there to teach you. And I think this is particularly important, with emotions and feelings and cravings. So, we all have them, lots of unpleasant ones, whether we like them or not. But so few of us grew up like learning to be really curious about our emotions. I think with negative ones, most of us try on one end just to avoid and run away from them, or on the other end, we get excessively entangled with them and we end up just kind of acting out. So once we can catch them when they come in due to that mindfulness practice, the curiosity component is then saying to that thought or whatever, what's that about? Where did that come from? What am I actually needing right now? And that curiosity to do that is a freaking superpower, and it's actually, I have found that even with super unpleasant emotions, when I can get curious, and I'm by no means perfect on this, there is actually like a good feeling, like even though this is a super unpleasant emotion, that ability just to kind of sit with it, and being willing to feel it is so new for me still. Like I used to just numb and escape all of those things. But it's a really powerful thing of realizing like, okay, we don't have to act on these emotions, treat them as gospel truth, but we do have to still pay attention to them. If we avoid them, then I think we get that like little part of ourselves that's just like, pay attention to me, screaming and begging, knocking at the door. And those emotions, I think, will go to whatever lengths they have to get our attention. So when we can get curious about them, kind of separating the trigger maybe from the root, is tough, but it's a lot easier with the coach. And I'm sure you've kind of had that experience too, where, that coach can kind of help you with those things of getting curious as to what's underneath that. What are we making that mean? What story are we telling ourselves about that's making that emotion seem so overwhelmingly difficult? And then the last but not least pillar that I have right now is gratitude, which again is another scientifically proven tool. And as I understand the science and based on my own experience, what that gratitude practice does is it retrains your brain and it leads to more positive emotion, which, as we said before, is critical to lasting habit change. But it also improves your physical health, your sleep, your mood, your immune system, so much more. And it's so simple, just getting into a daily habit of writing down a few things you're grateful for that day. By doing that, you are rewiring your brain to see the good. I think we all have struggles, of course, but there are some people, and I'm sure you've known them, your listeners have known them, that no matter what they're going through, they seem to have that peace and happiness about them that is not dependent on their circumstances or things going their way. They've got that garden of life and they always manage to see the flowers instead of just the weeds. And that comes back to my overarching key philosophy of reframing. And it reminds me too how I shared last week with the Become Euphoric participants. I was stuck on Interstate 15 going through Northern Nevada with my daughter and her friend for spring break. And we were stuck, dead stop, not moving for nearly 3 hours when a big rig that was hauling fuel overturned and spilled. And instead of, bemoaning, cursing, swearing, all my usual high-strung default reactions, I found my brain being like super grateful. I was grateful that it wasn't really hot as the Nevada desert can be. I was grateful I'd packed a lot of water and snacks. I was grateful that my teen daughter and her friend climbed through the sunroof of the minivan and sat on the top eating donuts. I was, grateful that people were milling around generally in pretty good spirits. My daughter and her friend had so much fun with that 3-hour delay on our already very long trip that when we were heading back to Southern California at the end of it, they both said they were hoping for another massive delay or closure. No, I quickly shut that down. So we don't really want to wish or hope for that, but it's really powerful what gratitude can do. And it's not an overnight change, but I think just keeping a daily or near daily gratitude journal really can rewire your mind and help you with that ability to reframe situations. So sorry to go on so long-winded there, but that, in a nutshell, is kind of my 6 pillars of change where I'm currently at with helping clients.
Oh my gosh, Amy, so brilliant. And, I'm thinking so much about what change really looks like. And it's really hard to say it's this, it's that, it's not this one thing will work for everyone because everyone's so different. But ultimately, deep down, change comes at a very deep identity level. We can change the superficial things and still not have that identity change. And identity change doesn't happen overnight, right? We have to recognize that it's this evolution and that it's almost like you're stirring a pot and the pot is red and we're trying to get it to blue one day, right? And so what do we need to add to get it to blue? It's not just going to happen quickly, but every single thing you throw in there, you throw in those 6 things and slowly the day by day practice of those things will eventually turn that pot into a different color. You don't know what is going to work on that subconscious mind overnight. And I don't think there is that secret sauce necessarily. But when we can change all of these things that you're talking about, fundamentally change what the brain does automatically. So we obviously can't get to a point, I don't think, where we have complete control of our, subconscious brain in the sense that you're never, frustrated or angry. You're having these automatic thoughts. Of course not. But what is the default? Is the default just, I'm going to be so worried about everything and frustrated and angry at myself and berating myself and upset about this life external thing and treating it as a victim that's happening to me? Or is my default going to be able to have a laugh about it and see some gratitude and learn from it and talk to myself a bit more compassionately? And that's kind of how I see that shift happening. Well, Amy, it's been really amazing talking to you. If anyone here is, really looking to make alcohol insignificant in their life, Become Euphoric is such an amazing place to make that change. You can join for a monthly fee that's less than the average cost of spend on alcohol. And so, I really want this episode to be about asking yourself, what kind of support do you have in your life? And recognizing how important support is and recognizing how important it is to have someone helping you make these shifts and, whether or not you deserve it. If you deserve to do what the alcohol industry wants you to do, right? Like, then why not just switch that exact same spend on something that really is going to heighten your personal development and really help you grow as a person and make you so much happier. And you guys, if you want to talk to Amy, she's incredible. If you go to just becomeeuphoric.com, that is where you can join Become Euphoric. But if you're not sure yet, or you just want to talk to Amy and learn more about maybe working with her, anyone is able to upgrade to work with Amy, which is just so incredible that she's offering that. But in becomeeuphoric.com, you'll find a link at the bottom of that page to book a call with Amy. So if you want someone to talk to and just tell your personal situation to, Amy really, as I think she's demonstrated, is such an empathetic soul, so incredible at holding space for people. So be sure to check that out either way. Amy, do you have anything last to add before I let you go?
Yes, I do. I want to tell you about this overall big picture visualization of how I see the reframing philosophy that I offer to clients. And I think it's just so important for all of us to understand this. And I don't know if you've heard of the Japanese ceramic art form called kintsugi, but that's, where the artists take those broken pieces of ceramic and they glue them back together again. They don't just use any old glue. It's not Elmer's or super glue. They mix gold dust into the glue. They're not trying to hide the cracks. They're owning them. They're honoring them. They're accentuating them. They're sticking gold in them, for crying out loud, or maybe silver or platinum, something else valuable like that. But the result of that is so astoundingly beautiful. And from what I've heard and read, oftentimes those ceramic art forms are even more valuable when they've been put back together like that with the gold dust. So they're celebrating the cracks as part of the story. They're not pretending there was never any breaks or that life isn't messy. When we pretend to be someone other than who we are, our true self hides in shame and in fear. We've got that fear of being discovered, and then the shame that we're either too much or we're not enough. But we are wired for connection. We are not meant to do life alone. And in that vein, this kintsugi art teaches us that we are each other's wounded healers. We all possess that gold dust that we can help use to put people back together again, making them even stronger and more beautiful than ever. And I think that is what we do in the Euphoric programs. That's what I try to do in my coaching. And I just wanted to share that visual because it was always so powerful for me when I learned about it. But I want people to really think about that when they're feeling like they're broken and that they don't see a way forward, and how they can be used through their story to help other people.
Well, and let's just turn that back on you. Like, you have shared so much so vulnerably about what you've struggled with, how your inner critic has worked, how really just beating yourself up, and the way that you've been able to transform that and develop and learn the neuroscience and the gratitude, and that you are such now a gift to other people. Such a gift, right? And just imagine, you guys, imagine if Amy, if a few years ago was like, I think I want to be a coach. I think I want to help other people, but no, you know what I mean? Like, she just passed on it. Just think of the loss. Just think of how many people would be without, I think, right now, because of your brilliance and ability to, like I said, hold such deep space for them. And I think, to me, right, like, I'm never going to pretend to be God. I don't know why things happen. I can't claim that, but when we can give meaning to the hardships through our life, and we can see that we become better people and more resilient and can then help other people through that, that to me is good enough. That is truly makes it feel like it does happen for a purpose, and that we have something to get out of it. So Amy, thank you for stepping up to that plate yourself, and being that, incredible vase with the gold in it, and for offering that to your clients.
Oh, you are very welcome. Thank you.
Awesome.